OKRs are everything. If you've watched some of the earlier videos, you may have picked up that I put OKRs above everything else, and you may be wondering a bit how OKRs fit with perhaps the backlog, business as usual, stuff that wanders in. Well, I have one simple answer to that, and that is when you're working in Agile with OKRs, OKRs are everything. If there's things you need to be doing, you need to highlight them in your OKRs. Because OKRs are not just a guide to the work you're doing. OKRs are a way of communicating with other people, with your stakeholders, with your managers, with other teams, as to what your priorities are, and you want to reflect what your team is doing. If you think about a typical team, yes, there is the backlog, and in Agile, particularly Scrum, the backlog is the big driver of work. However, most teams, in my experience, work comes from other places as well. Yes, we would like the backlog to be the one and only source of work, but more often than not, the support desk calls in with issues. You may, unless you're working on a completely new product that hasn't been released to customers, you're going to find that people have questions about your product, and they can't always be answered by first line support, or you may even be first line support. You may also find, and it's increasingly common, your team is a DevOps team, and as well as building the product and supporting, doing some customer support, you're also running the product. So if servers need to be swapped, if operating systems need to be upgraded, if there's potentially network issues, configuration issues, some piece of software is installed which upsets your piece of software, there's DevOps issues may be coming in. And then you may be working with a sales team, and it may be a casual kind of thing where a salesperson walks over and says, "Hey Joe, could you just do a demo for me? Hey Joe, could you just add this extra feature for me?" Or just simply, "Hey Joe, when will that feature be ready?" Sales teams come up with lots of small queries for dev teams, and sometimes they come up with really big ones. We've signed a deal with a customer and you're going to have to develop a specific piece of functionality, a bespoke package, some extra features just to close that sale. Not in the backlog, but it happens. And customers don't always come through the support desk of the sales team. Sometimes customers ring you up directly. Sometimes customers know who you are. Some teams don't have a support desk or even a sales team, and customers talk to them directly. And there's also history. People on your team worked on other things in the past in the same company, and sometimes those earlier initiatives come along and say, "Hey, can we just ask one of your people about this, or can you get somebody on your team to look at this?" So a lot of this gets called business as usual. As well as churning through the backlog, your team may be doing more or less of these things or other things, which is just, everyday life, business as usual. And then to this mix we add OKRs. Okay? Now, you've got a decision to make. Do OKRs guide all your work, or are OKRs in addition to all of this work? Because if you keep all of this, if you keep the backlog, your support, your customers, your sales and all the rest, and you just add OKRs, you are increasing the amount of work to do, you're increasing your work in progress. In Agile environments, we strive to reduce work in progress. If we reduce work in progress, work flows through more smoothly, work flows through more quickly, predictability is increased. There's all sorts of good things that come out of reducing work in progress. If we keep everything and just add OKRs, all we're doing is adding to the work burden. As a result, predictability will go down. You may find quality will go down. You might find throughput goes down because you've just got more stuff to do. So my suggestion is OKRs are everything. So all those other things you're doing, they are either reflected in your OKRs or you don't do them. So maybe in your OKRs you make a note about doing support desk work, about keeping the system operational, DevOps, about servicing sales teams, customers, history. By highlighting them in your OKRs, you have a conversation with your stakeholders, with your managers, with other teams and say, "Hey, we're doing all this stuff, and in addition we help out the sales team from time to time." Yes, that's a totally legitimate thing to do, but you want to make people aware that it happens. And maybe some of those other stakeholders say, hang on, you shouldn't be helping out the sales team. That's not your job. And you can have a debate about whether you should be helping out the sales team. And you can talk to the sales team. And maybe you decide that you shouldn't be helping out the sales team. And you come to some agreement that the sales team can do what they need to do without your help. By highlighting these things, you talk about them, you acknowledge they're happening, and perhaps you even get to change the way they happen. So make OKRs everything. Make all of your work subservient to OKRs. In fact, don't get out of bed in the morning if it's not in your OKRs. Yes? If something is important, then it needs to be reflected in your OKRs. I'm sure for many of you this sounds like a pretty radical message. Believe me, it makes sense because it lines everything up. If you'd like to understand it more, then take a look at the book.